started. So please introduce yourself in the chat. We're going to wait about 1 more minute before we get started. We're delighted to have you join us. Just go ahead and introduce yourself by your name and where you're joining us from. Okay, and welcome, and thank you for your commitment in living Laudato Si. Welcome to webinar 4, Action in the Light of Our Faith. Today's program, I want to begin by welcoming you and introducing myself. My name is Angelica Gonzalez Apple. I am the program manager for North America. We will also do an opening prayer, an introduction to Module 4, Faith into Action. We will have a guest speaker joining us and delighting us with a wonderful presentation on action in the light of our faith. We'll do 15 minutes question and answer with the panelists, 10 minutes of dialogue amongst each other as animators in small groups. We'll do a wrap up and a closing prayer. And just for logistics, please feel free during the webinar to make comments in the chat, and then also during the question and answers that will also be in the time of the chat. If we could all gather ourselves and center ourselves in prayer and ask God to illuminate us and to guide us through this animator journey, I will begin our prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes, bringing healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature. As we journey towards your infinite light, we thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And so once again, I introduce you to Webinar 4, Module 4. Things that you will gain during this training is practice the skill of putting together an event or activity in your community by talking with others about Laudato Si and having a chance to reflect on that learning. You'll also dedicate yourself to ongoing personal ecological conversion so that your hearts and eyes are open to the cry of the earth and the poor. You will continue ongoing involvement with GCCM, whether by building a chapter, a circle, involvement in Laudato Si generation, or otherwise supporting GCCM's common vision. In the beginning of our training, we talked about a capstone project. You may hear it in this presentation. Capstone project is the final project that we as animators put together and submit. And we're going to give you examples of that project, of different ideas and different projects that others put together. And then next week, we'll also have a session to talk about capstone projects and how you submit them, and then different guidelines for those. We could not put together this type of training if we didn't have the wonderful staff and team that we do have. I'd like to introduce colleagues of mine that are on this call, if not people behind the scenes that help out. Cheryl is the Asia Pacific and English speaking animators program manager. Brother Benedict is the program manager for Africa. Prince is the program coordinator in Africa. And as I mentioned before, I am the program manager for North America. So feel free during the Thinkific platform or even here on the chat to reach out to us. We have Representative Prince from Africa and Cheryl from the Philippines here, so you can reach out to us via chat. And we also have in the Thinkific platform, many of you have interacted or will be interacting with our volunteers. Jose from Portugal, Carolyn from Germany, and Kenya, we have Brother Steve. And in the morning sessions, we've been very honored to have Raul that's been doing some of the French translations. So we're very blessed to have such a wonderful and strong team to make these trainings possible. And without further ado, I am very delighted to introduce our guest speaker today, Mary Ann Comfort. Mary Ann is the Justice Coordinator for Earth, Anti-Racism, and Women for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. She is a steering committee member for both the Global Catholic Climate Movement and the US-based Catholic Climate Covenant. She is also the facilitator of the Interreligious Working Group on Extractive Industries, which aims to be in solidarity with people in the US and around the world impacted by mining, deforestation, and mega dams. Mary Ann has worked collaboratively with church-based groups in the Amazon and was engaged in education and advocacy around the Synod in the Amazon. Welcome, Mary Ann. It's a pleasure to have you. I am going to share your slides.
Great, thank you. It's so good to be with all of you. I actually took the Laudato Si Animators course in the spring. So I'm very aware and very familiar with the programming you're all involved in, and it's a very exciting journey, and I'm sure you're finding that to be true as well. So today we're going to be talking about moving to action. I know from my experience that up to this point, you've talked a lot about GCCM, what the Global Catholic Climate Movement is about. You've explored eco-spirituality, our call to conversion, and now we get to talk about action. How are we going to act out of that eco-conversion, out of that eco-spirituality that we ground ourselves in? Next. And so a reminder, of course, our whole mission as Laudato Si animators is to live Laudato Si. And that's what we're called to do both as individuals and in community. Next, please. So when we talk about living Laudato Si and moving into action, we're looking at our personal level of how we're going to live Laudato Si personally in our personal lives. And then, of course, as animators, we're really called to look at the community level. How do we animate others to live Laudato Si as well? Invite them along on our journey. Next. And part of this is Tomas Insua, the executive director of GCCM, has really thought a lot about and talked about this whole slow and fast paradox. So as you know, we have the turtle there on the left. And the turtle we often think of as kind of a metaphor for moving slowly. And we know that in this journey of living Laudato Si, we're often called to move very slowly. We're meant to spend time in prayer, in quiet. We're meant to take time to be attuned with nature, to really ground ourselves in a deep way in our faith, in the Gospels, and in Laudato Si. But we also know that we have to move fast, like the rabbit or the hare, that we are living in the midst of unprecedented crises. We're living in the midst of a pandemic, and people need assistance now. They need action now, and we can't go very slow in that realm. So we're meant to respond quickly, give people direct assistance, and look at how do we address the systemic issues that contributed to the situation so many people find themselves in. We're also in the climate crises, And like Greta Thunberg, the young woman in Sweden, will say, it's like we're in a house on fire and you can't take much time to figure out what are you going to do with the fire hose. You're just going to squirt the fire hose everywhere to put out the fire. So in these instances, we're really called to act fast. So the paradox is that we're meant to be contemplatives and to be activists, to be actors at the same time. We're called to be and to do at the same time. So the slow and fast paradox is what we hold as Laudato Si animators as we move forward. Next. And hopefully this graphic is familiar to you, but this is the 3 areas of how we work on Laudato Si, how we actually live Laudato Si. So there's a spiritual dimension that really calls us to go slow, to take the time to pray, to take the time to really discern, where is God calling me? Where is the world calling me? What are the people in my community calling me to go slow? Lifestyles dimension, part of that is going very slow. We need to slow down our lifestyle. We need to make deliberate choices about where are we going to put our energy, where are we going to put our time, and that means slowing down. But part of it might be fast as well. It might be we realize we have the opportunity to divest from fossil fuels and we need to do that now. We might realize that we need to shift from fossil fuels in fueling our homes. And that can be a shift that we need to do quickly. So in the lifestyles dimension, we're holding that paradox in actually both of those. And then in the societal dimension, raising our voice for bold public policies, that's more where we're called to really go fast. We're asked to be rabbits or hares in that sphere of that we know something is wrong, we know people are hurting, we know ecosystems are being destroyed, and we know that the climate crisis is only getting worse, and we need to call our policymakers to take bold measures. So this could be helpful as we're thinking about this paradox of go slow, go fast, of how we hold both of these at the same time, because we can't say, well, I'll wait till I get the perfect prayer life. I'll wait till I have total eco-conversion, and then I'll do the speaking out in the prophetic voice. No, we have to be speaking out at the same time that we're nurturing our prayer life. In the same realm, we can't be going fast all the time, doing the prophetic voice, and lose the voice and the voice of God and of our community and of our world that's talking to us in the slow, quiet moments of prayer. So we really need to hold all of these together to be both effective advocates and to be bold in the public sphere, and also to be contemplatives in action by taking time for contemplation and still out of that taking action. Next, please. So we'll just kind of go through each of these dimensions, those 3 dimensions, eco, spirituality first, which I understand you covered last time. And I'll just give you a moment to read the Laudato Si quotes. Each of these modules, each of these forms of our action is very much grounded in Laudato Si. So take a moment to read the quote to yourselves. Next, please. And then the second realm is living more simply. And of course, Pope Francis had a lot to say around that in Laudato Si. So we're called to live more simply, address our lifestyles. Next, please. And then raising a prophetic voice. Again, Pope Francis had a lot to say about that, both in Laudato Si and a lot of other addresses and writings that he's graced us with. And I have to say, I think that this is a photo from the climate march in DC, or maybe it was in New York, but I know looks like the group of people from the GCCM chapter in New York City. And they had these beautiful flowers that had phrases of why Catholics care about climate change, why Catholics are caring for creation. And they were like the best, the best signs in the whole march. They're just so beautiful and just really convey both this, you know, they're really grounded in our faith, our Catholic faith. So they're coming out of our eco-spirituality. Catholics for mercy for the earth, oceans are rising, so are we. These are all cries that come out of our prayer, that come out of our contemplation, and then we're putting them on signs and taking them into the public sphere and raising our prophetic voice. Next, please. So one way that we can take action is Laudato Si Pledge. And I understand that you'll be asked to do that as part of your work as Laudato Si animators, but wanted to give you a look at this. This is on the GCCM website. And this is an opportunity to really pledge that you're going to hold all those three dimensions: eco-spirituality, the living more simply, and being a prophetic voice. And you're also at the same time committing to be both the turtle and the hare, to both act and be very slow and methodical and prayerful, and to be very fast when we need to respond to the needs of people and earth. Next, please. So all of this dimension, when we're talking about the slow and fast paradox, when we're thinking about the three dimensions of living Laudato Si, are things that we can do both individually on a personal level, and also we're called to invite others on that journey as well. So we're next the rest of this time that I'll be presenting to you, we'll be talking more about that community dimension. What does it mean to invite others and to live Laudato Si in community? And so these are some possibilities that you can see, that a lot of ways that you could call your community to live Laudato Si. I'll give you just a minute or two to scan this, and you'll get this PowerPoint later on so that you can see all of these and spend some more time in prayer and contemplation and looking at these and see which really draws you in and what dimension you think you want to put your energy in and what type of project might call you. But let's take a moment for you to at least give it a scan and just see all the possibilities of living these three dimensions and for going slow and going fast at the same time. We got a message in the chat from Brother Anthony Zuba. He's a Capuchin friar, and he's telling us that that picture that I was noting was actually in Philadelphia in July 2016, and it was with the Metro New York Catholic Climate Movement, and he knows that because the friar in the picture is him. So thank you very much, Brother Anthony, for bringing that detail in and for letting us know that we have a friend amongst us who was actually in that picture. That's beautiful. Thank you. So I'm hearing that the print on the slides are not clear. So I'm sorry about that, but we will be sending the PowerPoint to you. So hopefully you can see that, but I'll read some of them out just to give you an idea what some of these are. There's holding an outdoor mass for creation. It's organizing prayer and conversation about Laudato Si. It's promoting the season of creation during Mass. It's organizing a Bible study. So that's all in the ecological conversion column. And then the footprint reduction, which is our lifestyles. How are we changing our lifestyles to reduce our carbon footprint? Some of the examples are planting trees, cleaning up the coast, starting a parish garden, greening your parish. So those are some examples of the lifestyles dimension. And then in the third dimension, raising a prophetic voice, some of the examples are organizing or participating in a climate strike, organizing a petition drive where you get everybody to sign onto a petition, and organizing fossil fuel events for fossil fuel divestment. So those are just some of the examples that fall in those three buckets, just to get your creativity going, to be thinking about what you might want to be doing in your community. So now we're going to share some real live examples of what some previous Laudato Si animators have done. These are actually examples from Laudato Si animators from last year in 2019. So they also were getting ready for the season of creation, just like you are. And they were taking this course and learning just as you were. And they came up with these really creative ideas. Up here on the top left, we have Valentino in Italy, and he created a Laudato Si circle. And that's basically a group of people who want to form a very local, very small chapter of GCCM, people who are committed to living Laudato Si and want to be on the journey together, because we know it's very difficult to do this alone. We need the encouragement, we need the ideas, we need the energy of people. When our energy is low, other people can buoy us up. So this is what Valentino did. He formed a Laudato Si circle, and he got them out on a nature walk. He took them on a nature walk, and through the nature walk, he also shared scriptures from Laudato Si and other spiritual readings as they're going on the nature walk. We also, we're gonna stay on that slide for a little bit, thanks. Can we go back one? Thanks. Then we also have, in Canada on the right, we had Karen, who actually organized a hike also. And she also did an outdoor mass. So she took people on a hike. This is in Canada. She took them on a hike, and then they ended in an outdoor mass. I would venture to say that this time during COVID-19 is a wonderful time to think about outdoor masses where we cannot have masses indoors, or if we do, they're very limited in numbers. I know that my particular parish here in Silver Spring, Maryland, we are having an outdoor mass, and it's been absolutely beautiful. It's under the trees, and somebody made an altar out of a log, so it's all very natural, and we're sitting underneath the trees and praying together and having the Eucharist, and it's just beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'd highly recommend considering some kind of outdoor for the community that you're working with. And then the final example we have under this is Alenka in Slovenia prepared a Taizé prayer. And it was a Taizé prayer for creation, and then also had a conversation on Laudato Si, and this was in her parish. So this was an opportunity to gather people both for prayer and for education. And I know that's a very popular way of engaging people. It is just kind of like in our 3 dimensions that we're talking about. You can do that in one gathering of people, have prayer, have them praying and reflecting, and then also considering lifestyles and action out of that. In US, there was a couple in last year in 2019 that they were able to speak to 3 masses. The priest gave them part of the homily, and they actually came up and talked about the season of creation and talked about all the different ways that people in their houses and their families could live the season of creation. So very, wide variety of possibilities. I would just invite people in the chat, if any of you have some thoughts around, if you're thinking you want to do a project with your community on ecological conversion, I think it would be lovely to see examples, If some of you are already thinking about what you'd want to do with your parish or with any other group that you're with, it'd be lovely to see in the chat what you all are thinking, so you could share with one another what you're thinking about. Maybe we'll just take a moment so people can look at the chat if anything gets posted there. You'll want to post to everyone so everyone can see your thoughts. So as we go along, I'll just invite you, if some thoughts come to your mind, please share them in chat. That's how we all learn, is from one another. So yeah, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the lifestyles dimension, this is the next dimension that we're called to live Laudato Si. And as you can see, lots of different activities. We have Elvira, who organized a beach cleaning in Mumbai in India. She joined the environmental cell of her parish, and she got them out on the beach to do a cleanup. So very local, very community-minded project. It falls in the lifestyles dimension, but in this case, it impacted the lives of a lot of people by cleaning up the beach. On the top right, I just love these projects. This is Eco Bricks. So I don't know if you can tell, but those are all bottles, say like pop or soda bottles, that are all lined up and forming another layer of the bench for people to sit on. And this is a way that a lot of communities are addressing the plastic pollution problem, that instead of throwing away big soda bottles or other bottles, you stuff them with material, and then they become bricks to actually make structures or to make things. And that way you're actually reusing the plastic rather than having it thrown away. The Sisters of Mercy in the Philippines, they have a school, and they've engaged the students in making eco bricks, and they've built a whole shed for the students to wait in when their parents are coming to pick them up at the end of the school day. And they also have made eco bricks to go around the edges of their school garden. So that's another way that they're using the eco bricks. So really creative. And I know there's a lot of groups that are now giving workshops. The Laudato Si generation, the young people affiliated with GCCM, they're giving a lot of workshops on that. Underneath that, we have tree planting. Krzysztof in Poland had tree planting with primary school students. So we know that trees pull carbon out of the air, and all the tree planting we can do is wonderful. And in fact, Pope Francis is calling us during this Laudato Si anniversary year to do Laudato Tree, planting all kinds of trees around the world as an expression of living Laudato Si. So Krzysztof there in Poland is putting that into practice. Then the final example here on the left is Krista in Ecuador. She did a multi-pronged project. They did a plant exchange where they had people were exchanging plants that they could take home, I guess. She also started a garden in their parish, so they have a parish garden. And they also engaged the young people in a, excuse me, I just lost my screen. There we go. She also engaged the young people in an environmental club and involved them in coming up with environmental stories, both in English and in Spanish. So I guess it was part of a bilingual lesson as well. So lots of very creative opportunities that we see here. And we see some other examples coming in the chat. We have the Women's League in Canada had a tree planting challenge for the centennial this year. So I can imagine that we're going to be seeing lots of tree planting in this season of creation, because it's a safe thing. We can do it outdoors. We can be spread out. We can spread our trees out all across the parish grounds or the school grounds. So I can imagine that Laudato Tree is going to be very popular in the season of creation, which is great. We also want you to know about the Eco Parish Guide, which is on the GCCM site and has all kinds of resources for you for how your parish, your school, your Catholic group can look at lifestyle, can look at reducing your carbon footprint. Next, please. And then the final dimension, we had eco-spirituality, we had our lifestyles, and now we're talking about raising a prophetic voice. So these are people who got involved in last fall's climate strike. You may remember that Greta Thunberg called all people of all ages to join youth around the world in walking out of school, walking out of our businesses, walking out of work, and proclaiming our deep concern for the climate and calling for climate action. So these are just a couple of examples of that. We had Netta in Australia, who on the bottom right, who organized a group to go to the climate strike there in her community in Australia. And then we had Samuel in Pakistan, who actually organized a climate strike. So that was last September. And you will have an opportunity this year, September 25th, this year, there's going to be another big climate strike. So stay tuned for details on that and all the different ways that maybe you could get people involved in that. I know my husband is a climate activist, and he's been talking about a shoe strike, where rather than getting thousands of people together, which would be wise given the pandemic we're living through, they have people put out hundreds and hundreds of shoes. So you don't need as many people, but you're representing all the people who would have been there and would have wanted to be there if it weren't for needing to stay safe and to have social distance. So there's lots of creative ways that we can still be out in the streets, can still be raising our prophetic voice and call for climate action. And then the last piece that we'll share with you that's really important and that GCCM has really taken leadership on is fossil fuel divestment. Is really calling on our parishes, our religious orders, our dioceses, our universities to divest from fossil fuels, to really put our money where our, where we say our values are, and to say that we don't want to profit, we don't want to get income from fossil fuels, and instead we want to put the funding into alternatives, into clean energy. So there's lots of opportunities through GCCM to engage your institution in this. And we'll be having a new announcement of more Catholic organizations divesting in November. So I'm sure you're going to be hearing about that from GCCM about, asking you to see if you have organizations who are ready to make that announcement. So what we want to do is kind of have a little sense of everybody to know what kind of final project you might like to do. If you think you're going to do an ecological conversion project, just type in the chat 1. If you think you might do something around sustainability, living simply, put 2. Advocacy, raising our voice, 3. And if you're not sure, that's okay. You can put number 4. That's perfectly fine, because this is the time that you're going to be taking over the next next couple weeks at least, to be thinking what is most calling at your heart and what is most fitting for your community. And it's also a time to be in that slow part of the paradox of taking the time for prayer and discernment of what we think that we're being called to. So I see pretty much spread throughout. You have quite a numbers of 1s, 2s, some doing all 3. That's great. Yeah, because some of the actions really can be, like we saw in some of the projects from last year, they can really span all of them. And again, I would invite people, if you have specific projects you're thinking about, please put them in chat so people can be inspired from you as well. I saw that we had somebody's talking about a prayer service that ties earth justice with racial justice. That's really powerful, particularly here in the US. where we have the Black Lives Movement that has just really taken everyone, really taken up by everyone here. So Janet Cross, thank you for that. She says, Pope Francis points out how minorities are disproportionately harmed by climate change and pollution, as well as climate migration. And then they would also include and examine as part of it. That sounds really exciting. I personally, Janet, am really excited to hear about what you've come up with. So I hope that your project is able to be shared widely in some way, because I think that is really important. A prayer service that ties earth's justice with racial justice. Also heard about a parish garden. Somebody shared about their parish garden that they're doing. And they're asking a priest in the parish to say an ecological mass called the Great Turning. That's wonderful. That sounds like that's inspired by Joanna Macy, the wonderful, I guess, eco-philosopher. That's wonderful. So lots of good examples. And I'm sure that as you gather in your small groups, you'll be sharing with one another and inspiring one another as well. Somebody's talking about solar panels on their church hall and schools. Rooftop vegetable garden. Wow, really great. Australian native plants in the car park. Wonderful. Lots of creativity and lots of ideas sparking here. Great. Thank you so much. And then, of course, there's the personal. Somebody's talking about lifestyle changes in their own house, in their own family. All very, very important. Next slide, please, Angelica. So one of the things we want to invite you to is you saw Valentino in pictures. He was one of the Laudato Si animators last year, and he did the Laudato Si, had people going on a nature walk. And so one of the things we invite you to is not after you do your project, you'll have a community. You'll have a whole group of people who have joined you in whatever your activity is. And a way to keep that group going and to keep them both going slow and going fast and working on all these dimensions of living Laudato Si is to form a Laudato Si circle. And that's a way to keep everyone connected, to keep everyone thinking about a future projects you can do, keeping everyone really focused on living Laudato Si in all those dimensions. And I believe that GCCM has a lot of resources to support those circles. And so if you do form a circle, there's all kinds of resources. There's sharing among people who are in the circles. So there's a lot of engagement where you can learn from others who are doing the same thing. Next. And so we just want to thank you for responding to the Pope's call. We really appreciate you on this journey as Laudato Si animators, on this journey of going slow and going fast, and this journey of those three different dimensions of living Laudato Si, and are very excited to see what you all come up with, what your projects are, what your communities embark on. And I know there's a whole network of Laudato Si animators that will be ready and excited to learn from you about what you're doing.
Sorry about that, Marianne. Continue on.
Oh, that's okay. So I guess we're going to have some time for.
Sorry, there was a little glitch with the sound. Go ahead. We are going to do a question and answer session. Before that, I'm just gonna kind of allow you to gather your thoughts. I know Marianne shared some wonderful, wonderful insights. And I really loved how you shared the to be and to do and giving us the how to be contemplative advocates, but also how to move fast when we need to, and then how to work with the community. I really love the fact that you went through our animators program and you firsthand know as well in both your work and then on the side of being an animator, how you can help raise that prophetic voice. And again, I'm sorry that the music cut you off, but we're gonna have a chance for you all to ask Marianne questions that you have in mind. And again, I'm really glad that she was able to ask you those questions of what you have in mind, because I'm really inspired. I think we're amongst a lot of experts already, because your mind and your creativity is just astonishing to know that, one, you're already working on some of these projects, or that you have some of these in mind already at this stage of your animator's journey. So we're going to go ahead and think about questions. We're going to just take a small little pause, and then Cheryl, my colleague, will be reading the questions.
The Lord in his rays, the moon and the stars who light up the way unto your throne. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and all creation is shouting for joy. Come dancing the forest, come playing the field, and sing, sing the glory of the Lord. Praise for the wind that blows through the trees, the sea's mighty storms, the gentlest breeze. They blow where they will, they blow where they please, to please the Lord. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and all creation is shouting for joy. Come dancing the forest, come playing the field, and sing, sing the glory of the Lord. Praise for the rain that waters our fields and blesses our crops, so all the earth yields. From death unto life, her mystery revealed, springs forth in joy. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and all creation is shouting for joy. Come dancing the forest, come playing the field, and sing, sing the glory of the Lord.
Okay, I'll start off the first question. This is also a similar question from the previous session. Our animators are really very willing and eager to work with the dioceses and with their parishes. And so one of the question was, how do they get their parish priests and bishops engaged?
I will respond, but I think maybe Angelica, maybe you'd have some more to add to that as well. But I think it depends on your context. During the season of creation, the Vatican has actually sent a letter or posted a letter to all the bishops' conferences around the world, asking the bishops' conferences to celebrate the season of creation and to get involved. So one of the things you might be able to do is to see what your country bishops conference, if they've got it posted on their website, if they've shared that. If they have, then that would be kind of a direct message from bishops to the priests in their diocese or in their country that they should take, they should get involved in that. So that could be one route to go, is just to see what your bishops conference has said or the bishops have said, and then that you could then tell your priest, the bishops are saying we should celebrate the season of creation, let's do it. But Angelica, do you have other ideas for that?
I've also had this conversation with many animators, and what some have tried to do is work with their diocese and get a letter from their bishop, from their Office of Life, Justice, and Peace, that are working on specific social justice actions. And so they would just kind of educate the bishop a little bit on Laudato Si, and then they've endorsed the season of creation because it's coming from the Vatican. So they'll actually send a letter to the specific parish inviting them to participate. And so that's been a big help, as we know that many of the priests have other priorities or just don't know how to get the amount of volunteers needed. So just a kind of a little bit of a gentle nudge in the sense that we're wanting to move slow and fast, but I think a little bit of support from a letter is very helpful from what I've heard from animators.
Thank you. And following that question, Sarah is wondering if you would recommend, Marian, that action in the parish begins with a parish audit of our footprint, and if so, how do we go about it?
Yeah, I think that's always a good first step, is to have an audit or to have some kind of assessment done about how much energy you're already using, where you might be able to do a lot of energy efficiency measures. Sometimes you can reduce a lot of energy just by more energy efficient measures before you even have to do solar panels or other things. Again, depending on your context, in the United States, the Catholic Climate Covenant is a good go-to resource for all kinds of things around how to reduce your carbon footprint in a parish. So you could look at that website. Even if you're not in the US, you might want to look around at that website to see what ideas are there that might transfer to your particular country. You might want to see if energy companies, I know that in the US, a lot of energy companies offer for free energy audits, and they'll come in and check and see, you know, are you well insulated? Are you losing heat, heat or air conditioning through the windows, or, so sometimes energy companies will come and give audits as well.
Thank you, Marian. And so there is also a question about divestment. So you speak about divestment of fossil fuels. One of our animators live in the heart of oil country and in a cold climate that relies on fossil fuels to heat our homes. How to advocate for divestment of fossil fuels in this situation?
I would say that that's very difficult, and I certainly sympathize with that. I know there's a lot of communities in the U.S. that would fall in that situation too, or as well, if you're also posing that from the U.S. But I don't know if maybe one of the staff members, if any of you are working on GCCM's divestment campaign and could speak to that more directly. So maybe what we could do is maybe we could get some more information. That GCCM does have staff that specifically work on divestment, and they're different staff than we have right here. So maybe we could get some information to the Laudato Si animators about some ways to talk about divestment and ways to look at divestment, even if you're in very challenging situations like was just described, where actually people's livelihoods depend on fossil fuels, and that's a very difficult conversation and a real one that we need to be aware of. But I would say one of the things, those of us who talk about a just transition away from fossil fuels and towards clean energy, is all about making sure we don't leave anyone behind. So if we're living in communities where people's livelihoods depend on the fossil fuel industry, it's very important to communicate that we care about them, that we really want to make sure that their livelihoods are protected so that they don't feel like we're creating tension and animosity between people who want to care about the environment and people whose livelihoods are in fossil fuels. And then to have conversations about how can we retrain people so they can be in the clean energy jobs or in other jobs. So I think that question goes much broader than divestment, but into all these other areas too, of how do we transition from fossil fuels to clean economy without leaving people behind, whether you live in a very heavily fossil fuel dependent community or whether you live somewhere that has lots of sunshine and can easily transition to solar. I think we need to really communicate that we're caring about all people and want everybody to move forward with us together. But
Yeah.
specifically about divestment, we can get more information to you.
And just to kind of put in a plug, Marianne, and for all of you, there will be Season of Creation webinars coming up that also are going to have emphasis on just transition and divestment. So those would probably be the best areas to ask some of those deep questions, because as you mentioned, it is sometimes for many people in communities a difficult situation. So you can find that out all on our Season of Creation website.
And I see that we're also having some responses from animators too about ways that they've engaged their bishops and priests. So please look in the chat. There's all kinds of suggestions people are offering one another about how to engage with priests. And my favorite one is there's actually a priest who said he's an animator training and he's a priest and he's going to make sure that there's a Season of Creation liturgy. So that's wonderful to know that we have clergy here who can directly make it happen. So please invite your fellow priests to join you in that as well.
Thank you. And the next question would be about private entities. How would the big corporations be brought in the conversation and also be encouraged to take the stand and not just to have PR statements?
Good question. Again, I can only speak from the US context, but maybe that'll be helpful. So in the US context, we have socially responsible investing. So the Sisters of Mercy, who I work for, other religious orders, other religious groups, invest money so that they can take care of the elderly sisters and also do the mission. And so we are often engaging with corporations and trying to nudge them to do the right thing. So there's a group called ICCR, the Interreligious Investment, Interfaith, anyway, I'm getting all mangled, but ICCR, and it's an interfaith corporate responsibility group that's made up of lots of religious congregations, lots of religious organizations and denominations. And their whole work is around pressing corporations to do the right thing. And in this space, there actually has been some success in getting gas companies to reduce their flaring. So flaring is when gas is released out of the gas power plants, and methane is released into the air and causes great harm to the environment, to the climate. So pressure from investors has actually gotten corporations to greatly reduce, some corporations to greatly reduce the flaring and the release of methane into the air. So there is opportunities for big groups of people that invest in these corporations to put pressure on them. So, and then there's also boycotts, and there's lots of means that historically people have used to pressure corporations. But I think the investor pressure is one that's really taken off and is really working well, at least in the US context.
Thank you for sharing that, Marianne. Of course, definitely we are learning from that example. Next question is this is a more personal question. Overcoming resistance and apathy can be draining at times. Do you have any tips for continuing the journey at times when it seems too hard?
I think the key is community. So I think once you get your group of people that are going to work together, that's what's going to sustain you. Because yeah, it's very easy to get frustrated and when you're doing this alone. But once you plan your activity, make sure that you have other people involved, that you're not doing it all by yourself, but you invite other people to engage with you in planning the activity, doing the activity, and then keeping those people involved afterward. Whether it's a formal Laudato Si circle or other way that you just have a group of people that are working together, and that community is really, really important to keep you moving forward and having hope, because you're with other people, you're not all alone.
Thank you. And this last question would be for GCCM, I believe. Can this animators workshop be introduced in parishes so as to create awareness among parishioners? Angelica, would you like to answer this? Or I can, but yeah.
Absolutely. I think part of our goal, and as what Marianne shared today, is to be the action and be the light. So we as animators are called to be beacons of light. We are called to invite others. One of the stories that Marianne shared about the hike and then the Laudato Si Mass, Karen from Canada was actually inspired by another animator, and she just was very curious that she was going to these meetings and she was putting together different events in the parish, and she wanted to learn more about that. And so her friend invited her told her about the animators training. Karen went through the training, and then that was her capstone project. So I think the stories that we can tell are what transform people. Our own ecological conversion stories are what inspire others. So I really encourage you all to share and to be advocates of how you can promote the Animators program, because it is through the training and hearing not only Marianne's story as an animator, but others, and the fact that she mentioned building a community is really what is the light that we're sharing and really living Laudato Si.
Thank you, Angelica. And I also would like to mention that all the resources which we are sharing during the training, you are free to use them. Thank you, Angelica. We can now move to the small group discussion.
Great. So our next part of our training today is our group discussion. So you will have an opportunity to dialogue with Anna and other animators regarding your ideas, projects that you may have in mind. And then just as Marianne said, who are you thinking in your community that you could possibly already work with or recruit? So Prince is going to do us the favor of separating us into breakout sessions. What that entails for you is you're going to see a screen pop up on your monitor, and you just click join breakout session. You're going to give it a couple minutes, and we will post the questions that you will be dialoguing, but begin to introduce yourself, your name, and where you're joining us from, and what are your ideas of living Laudato Si in putting your action into work, and then a couple of people that you may think that you would include. Back to the main session, we're just going to ask you, I know there were some great insights in our group. If I could just kindly ask you in the chat to type a couple of things that came through as an inspiration from your dialogue in your small group. The conversation will continue because we have the Thinkific platform, and you can discuss and share different ideas. But it's always great, as it's fresh in our mind, to just share a couple of things that came up within your group. So go ahead and take a minute or two to type it in your chat, please. So as we continue moving along with our webinar, please feel free at any minute to type in the chat. I am just going to talk briefly about what are some of the next steps. So as we've talked about before, the Thinkific platform is a great way to engage with other animators. If you have not completed your homework, please do so. Assignments as well. There's the presentations on there, the recordings. You can always go back to them, rewatch them. Definitely share those if you want to enlighten other people in your parish. That's what those resources are for. You will be receiving an email coming up about the Capstone project, and it's going to be a regional webinar for next week. So there'll be a general email that will include links for your region. So if you're in the African continent, you're going to want to copy the Zoom link that's for your region. If you're in North America or Asia Pacific, they're all going to be specific links. Again, just to remind you that the Capstone project is the final project for animators to receive certification. We gave many examples of Capstone projects today, and next week we will talk in depth about what are the key steps for your Capstone. Graduation will be October 14th, so all homework assignments, reading, and capstone project will need to be submitted before that graduation date. In your homework, just to remind you, last week's was an eco-conversion template and reflection, and so feel free to go back and complete that. Another resource for you, we've talked about Season of Creation. Please go to GCCM's website on Season of Creation. And if you already have events going on in your parish or your organization, please enter them, fill out the form, and get those uploaded so that others can see and participate, especially if they're webinars or prayer service that you would like to get people to attend. Please list them in the Season of Creation webinar. But it is with great pleasure that we had Marianne join us. So I'd like to just extend this time, Marianne, to thank you for being part of our webinar tonight. I know it's late in the East Coast. I know it's very late for many of you in Canada as well and other parts of the world. So just a big thank you for taking the time and living this journey of Laudato Si. We as animators and as staff are here to support you along this journey, not only through this program, but after what's to come. So feel free to reach out to us. And I just want to thank everybody, not only our staff, but our volunteers that are able to make this possible. I am going to move on to our closing prayer. And I'm hoping that our technology works. But we're just going to, again, center ourselves in prayer and be thankful for what we have and this opportunity to work as a global community together.
God of love, I thank you for the people in my life who are easy to love. I thank you for my family and friends who understand my actions, who support me in my decisions, and whose presence can lift the burden of a thorny day. Help me with those who are difficult to love. When they come at me with criticism and wild expectations, when they ignore me or try to bend me to their will, let me recognize their flaws and their dangers. But then, let me remember your attitude toward them and lead me to see them in the light of your love. Amen.
Amen. And so here's a video that's been very well reclaimed amongst our animators from a group in Africa that put together as a project a Laudato Si celebration song. And so thank you again. Look for that email that we'll be sending. Make sure that you have the correct link for that webinar. And thank you very much and have a good night. And for some of you, good morning.
Tremblement de terre. Écoute les frères de pauvres mères de la terre. Au secours! Sauvez-les pour la gloire du Seigneur! This is a warning and is a coding from Madame. Common homes are falling apart, is on fire. Child is a modern spiritual challenge. Gracias Santo Padre Papa Francesco per Laudato Si. Laudato Si, celebration. Laudato Si, oh mi Signore. Laudato Si, celebration. Laudato Si, oh mi Signore. Laudato Si, generation. Laudato Si, oh mi Signore. Laudato Si, celebration. Laudato Si, oh mi Signore. Laudato Si, generation. Laudato Si, oh mi Signore. Usiache mabari, usiache wanyonge. Elewa maisha ni kila kitu kiumbe naye. Now we got to see celebration. Celebration. Laudato si, oh mi Signore, laudato si. Generation, laudato si, oh mi Signore, laudato si. Celebration, laudato si, oh mi Signore, laudato si. Generation, laudato si, oh mi Signore. America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, White Church, Muslim Christians, building a better world together, one world with a common plan, praying for creation, living simply, advocate for our common home. Dio, l'umanità e la natura. Grazie Santo Padre, Papa Francesco.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a great pleasure to have you all with us. We want to make sure that you feel supported along this journey and want to thank you for your commitment. Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Prince and Cheryl. Have a good night, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Good night. Thanks for having me with you tonight. Good night.
Take care.
Bye.